Chapter 2. John Howe studied the readings of last week's test results on the clipboard that he held up to his face in his left hand. To say he wasn't a happy man was putting it so delicately as to be walking on thin eggshells, and his annoyed expression only fueled his resentment more and more, being lulled into a false sense of security by the bastards who had hired him. The company, White Umbrella, had watched him more closely than he had ever known, gathered information on him, and then, when they'd had enough of postponing the inevitable, Umbrella had approached John to his face and offered him a big part in their organisation, saying that they wanted to help him with his additional blueprint of a miracle cure for cancer. John Howe had made valiant strides in helping to beat back cancer well and after Umbrella had entered the game and got him on board with their countless promises. For him, as much as anything, it was beyond a labour of love and determination, and far too primal and powerful for just words alone, as he had lost many of his friends and family to many of a grisly end at the cruel, invisible hand of cancer. He'd only been 17 years old when he lost them all, and the memory of those losses, combined in his heart and mind, tore at him time and again, like a wound that would never heal. Despite accepting Umbrella's offer, John was very sceptical about them keeping their word, and many times over went quite out of his way, not for the first time, to keep his cure for cancer out of Umbrella's hands. For the good of all, in case they decided to try and use this breakthrough in biogenetic engineering for their own selfish pleasure. It wasn't long before they showed their true colours. One day, John went to add the finishing touches to his great cure and justified middle finger to a frightful illness, just to find to his horror that his project wasn't in the lab where he had left it. By the time he had found the room where the disrespectful grunts claiming to be scientists and techs had taken his cure away entirely without his willing consent, the incalculable damage had already been done 1,000-fold. All of his tireless efforts, patience and thoughtful experimentation for a better tomorrow had been spirited away by the very pharmaceutical giants that hadn't just gone back on their word, but also had the nerve to turn John's cure for the Big C into a bioorganic weapon and virus called the T-virus. Although the creation of the new T-virus was still pretty much the new strain on the laboratory floor, it was such a volatile thing to have ever been created at all, that whenever it was injected into the bloodstream of any human test subjects, it made the cold hand of cancer seem idyllic by comparison. These idiots and their higher-ups will never have the sense or honour to own up to their own errors, or their shameful treatment behind my back, or my life's work. So many more people could have lived their lives without ever having to look over their shoulders where cancer was concerned ever again. The thought did little to relieve the unhealthy rise in John's blood pressure, as the pain, anger and despair of that moment made him feel so angry, betrayed and furious that for what felt like hours before he was able to mentally push the barely 2-week bad memory away, he actually felt as though he had the strength physically and mentally to break the clipboard in two in a fit of temper over his knee, or be able to tear a table apart without even pulling a single muscle. How dare this treacherous excuse for a company to treat me and something that wasn't made for greed alone like shit, he thought. His teeth were clenched so tight that once or twice he honestly thought that he heard a good many of his own teeth squealing in protest. Many times, very recently, John had complained verbally face to face on more than one occasion to many high-ranking members of Umbrella's research staff that turning a cure into a viral infection and weapon was borderline immoral and that it wasn't called for. But however much he argued, John always found himself on the losing side. Either all voices, male and female alike, would shout over him, totally deflating his rightful opinion, as if it was never truly there. Another time he was threatened with a beating if he didn't drop the subject and his independent way of thinking. In a fit of frustration, too worked up to control himself at the time, John verbally snapped at them, calling Umbrella a waste of space. When two of them had charged him, he had banged their heads together and hit them both with 2 right hooks, which had sent them both crashing to the ground. Before John had time to react to save himself, 5 Umbrella security guards had fell upon him and beat him savagely with their rifle butts. He'd been knocked senseless in the struggle and kept alive as part of the firm on purpose, as a lesson to anyone else who dared to play hero and speak out against White Umbrella. John's brown eyes sparkled with animosity as he came back to reality and remembered where he was. He glowered at the clipboard with such ferocity that the dark light boiling away beyond his brown gaze felt as if he could be one of those men who could light a fire just by looking at it. Angrily, John forced himself to cool down and bide his time. One day, the Umbrella Corporation would get what they deserved for every man, woman, and child they dared to step on to get to their position of power. And when that day came full circle, it would be one hell of a day to circle on the calendar of life. And should a day like that ever come, Umbrella would have a very long fall from their high perch of lies and deceit. John Howe allowed a grim smile to play across the contours of his face. A smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, and after mulling over the possibilities of such a day of reckoning, he turned his attention back to the clipboard in his hand and the result it had to show for itself, satisfied for a time.